You need to be more careful when the wind rises, George. You nearly lost your kite. And you too, nearly lost your tooth.
The question
Wow, Nero, I can't believe we watched all those Disney remakes, huh? Hiya, Toonies, I'm WHYBOY and this is Nero.
Hey.
We're mixing it up with some Disney magic, because as we know, Disney is a
Old, soulless monopoly.
Now, Nero, that's not fair. Disney are trendsetters. Why, they've even come up with the most magical of methods to make an insane amount of money.
Rehashes? Oh, yuck! I guess we can't really blame them. The rehash method has been great for Disney. They've been producing weaponized nostalgia for years now and making buku bucks for the mouse.
So Disney is gonna squeeze every red cent out of those old and crusty animated classics. Kudos that there are some that will be vastly reimagined and others that will get a meager coat of bland paint. We'll see for ourselves which movies go above and beyond the concept of copy and paste.
So with WHYBOY covering the best,
And Nero covering the worst,
this is the 5 best and 5 worst Disney live-action remakes.
101 Dalmatians. When it comes to cute animal comedies, there are bucket loads in this genre. So, pitching 101 Dalmatians, an admittedly slower paced animated movie in Disney's library and redoing it to fit that mold is a hard sell. What could keep a 101 remake from fading to obscurity like Air Bud or Snow Dogs? You hired John Hughes, a well-versed writer in what some call magical realism. John Hughes' work blends a real-world setting with some fantastical circumstance to capture the emotional heart of the story, combining with well-choreographed shots and fast-paced slapstick comedy. Having a talent like that to bring in a unique writing style can lead to a solid approach to a Disney remake. So the 1996 remake is similar to the original, but without the talking animals aspect, which could be considered a limitation, but honestly it works out really well for the cast in its favor. It's able to still convey a lovey-dovey love story between Roger and Anita, as it's accompanied by their lovable Dalmatians Pongo and Purdy, using body language and framing to convey their mood. Just seeing dogs, let alone so many puppies, performing well-trained stunts is an impressive undertaking. If Disney remade 101 Dalmatians currently, I think many of us would fear the dogs would be mostly CGI to make them do the more outlandish stunts. Nevertheless, the remake is the original animated film with simple modernized settings with nothing lost in between. The comedy is good, the animals are cute, and the highlight of many Disney films, the villain, is amazing. Glenn Close as Cruella DeVille is a scene-chomping beast who revels every second she's on screen. She's the pampered, petty cartoon counterpart, all the while injecting the Home Alone-style charm of John Hughes-style antagonist. Even her goons, Jasper and Horace, work, allowing for comedic gold when these bumble and boobs get their comeuppance. Going from a cute animated animal film to a live-action slapstick comedy could have been dangerous, resulting in a loud, bombastic mess. But with the writing of John Hughes, this film goes together like a Dalmatian in spots.
102 Dalmatians. Speaking of loud bombastic messes, you ever see 102 Dalmatians? WHYBOY praised the 96 film for its heartwarming and comedic nature, stating how it went above and beyond the generic norm of cutesy animal films. Well, then we got good news, because 102 Dalmatians is the beneath and below generic norm of cutesy animal films. But what about the story? Well, when John Hughes writes, it's magical realism, allowing the real world to exist, but with a degree of wonder to it. In this movie, Cruella is sent to an asylum, much in the same way of Batman's Arkham. She gets to go through experimentation to fix her, and she goes through hypnosis, and they remove her fur fetish and rewrite her personality to love animals. Bet you can't guess where this'll go. The rest of the flick is a generic save the animal shelter plot with poorly done proxies of Roger and Anita. So 4 years after the success of the 96 film, Disney makes a sequel that's got the retread love story of the first film, but the basic difference is they removed everything that worked. John Hughes as a writer? Gone. The majority of the cast and characters? Gone. So let's just forgo what worked and instead use the crutch of then current special effects. Have a celebrity play a wisecracking animal sidekick, and don't forget the hip music for the kids. 102 Dalmatians feels like all that fear we had going into that first film is brought to life in the second film. If 101 goes together like a Dalmatian and spots, then 102 goes together like a pig and
Cinderella. Does anyone remember this one? Nero and I vaguely remember trailers for Cinderella around the time it came out. Yet it's like Cinderella came to theaters, was out, and then, poof, no one even acknowledges it. But it's a shame when you get down to it, this Cinderella is pretty much the 1950s animated film. It does use a bit more modern writing techniques to make the story more dynamic, but at its core, Cinderella 2015 is a solid retelling of a classic fairy tale. It's the story of kind-hearted Cinderella and expands upon what the 1950s animated film only glossed over. Before, we just knew she lived with a stepmother who's a jerkwad, but never really knew her life beforehand. The 2015 film explores the setup to the well-known story. The film explores Cinderella's home life with her father, showing cheerful and charming moments before the unfortunate downturn of Cinderella's life, allowing the viewer to feel some connection of joy with Cinderella, as we know it's a fairy tale so it's all going to be ripped away shortly after. Unlike the shallow nature of the animated film, Cinderella is given the chance to expand her connections to Prince Kid, making the romance between them feel more tangible by having it grow over time, rather than how she gets with Charming in the 1950s version because that's what you do in fairy tales, the girl gets the guy. The casting is also well done, with everyone doing a great job, from Lily James beautifully playing Cinderella to Richard Madden as a fittingly charming Prince Kit, and the fairy godmother, played by Helen Bonham Carter, bringing her quirky character acting to the forefront. It's delightful. But the breakout character again is the Disney villain Lady Tremaine, who thanks to Cate Blanchett succeeds in emulating the cold and judgmental demeanor of the original Tremaine, but adds in her own petty desperation for control. She really is a bit of a tyrant in this film, and it works to flesh her out as more of a serpent rather than the 1950s stone-faced gargoyle. Cinderella 2015 also sports good set work, costume design, musical score, and takes a wonderful fairy tale and has fun with it, without the need to mutilate it into some cracked mirror version of itself. Instead, it gives you something we don't get very often, and that's just a fairy tale.
Alice Through the Looking Glass. You like mutilations? You like cracked mirrors? Well, we got a cracked mirror for you. Alice Through the Looking Glass, to me, and to WHYBOY, is equally as inferior as the 2010 Alice in Wonderland. In Looking Glass, Alice returns to Underland, where she finds the Mad Hatter is dying of depression due to his lingering guilt over his family. And that sounds pretty interesting. You get to analyze depression, its effects on the mind, maybe analyze the idea of remorse for not making amends with your family. But we don't have time for that. Alice has to go on a whirlwind adventure with the Chronosphere, a magical artifact that can allow for time travel. And if you're wondering why we edited in Doctor Strange footage, it's because the film was dropped in 2016 and Doctor Strange came out, and Disney has been leaning hard on the Marvel action comedy style of movie making. So all their films are starting to feel kind of samey. Look, I don't need it to be like the book. I do like that Looking Glass wants to do something different. I applaud that. I champion that idea. But it comes off as a messy narrative. It's a mix of poorly perceived parallels and frankly bad narrative backtracking. The writing wants to retcon that the Red Queen is not all that bad a person, that she was just sour as a child, that she bickered with her sister, that if she maybe just had some love, she would have grown up to be a better person. So when we can cut back to modern day, we can see that the Red Queen has a blood-filled moat filled with decapitated heads surrounding her house. The Hatter's plot is equally ridiculous. Much like Alice, the Hatter is considered too outlandish by his parents. The only saving grace for me is Sacha Baron Cohen as Time, who's an interesting character? Idea? In an otherwise boring movie with mixed messages of the past is the past, while simultaneously saying it's okay to forgive those who have hurt you. Which is a novel concept, and I think we can all agree pain shouldn't be a competition, but the way they deal with tragedy in this film is weird. Your dad ripping your paper hat and making you sad as a kid, while a jerkwad thing to do, is not the equivalent of, say, your mother actively trying to sabotage your career as a glass ceiling breaking sailor woman, nor is it even on the same leagues as a kill crazy queen that commits mass genocide, including the consumption and murder of children.
Please don't. No, I have little ones to look after.
Go to his house and collect the little ones. I love tadpoles on toast, almost as much as I love caviar.
I generally give pretty good advice, and I seldom take my good advice. But take it from me, skip this madness.
Lady and the Tramp. I know, this is the one that we liked? The CG dog lip flap movie? Maybe you can jot this to low expectations. That's fair. And honestly, could be a factor. When so many saw the trailers for Lady and the Tramp and that dog lip flap animation, it was pretty easy to write the movie off as just budget pet comedy like the 2001 classic Dr. Dolittle 2.
It's worse than I imagined it would be.
But unlike that magnum opus of critter comedy, Lady and the Tramp is, to quote NERO, surprisingly delightful. No, really. Much like Cinderella, it takes verbatim the same narrative beats in the original story, but spins it with more modern understanding of story structure and character development, which makes Lady, who was very much a shallow, prim Duchess archetype, placed to unfamiliar surroundings in the original, and gives her more agency within the story, as she is the one who tells off the tramp, pursues the tramp, and in the end races to save the tramp. She feels like a leading lady now, instead of a dog being dragged by its leash. And the writing just has a more thematic focus on the concept of loyalty that was prevalent in the original, but refined in this 2019 remake. There's a stronger characterization with the lead's romance, and connects their opposing views of loyalty and analyzes their life experiences to show how they developed their philosophies. This remake takes the classic Walt Disney love story and refines it to get out the wrinkles that otherwise hurt the original. The strength in Lady and the Tramp lies within the weaponized nostalgia to work to its advantages, to take a bit of the old, to make something wholesome and new.
Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. You know, it's at this point that I believe I started to realize that whenever Disney goes off the beaten path to do something different, it turns into a game of Russian roulette. Taylor and I don't love the 2014 Maleficent, but we do think there are some good ideas within it. Themes of maternal bonds, projected hatred, and forgiveness. The first film is a very personal story with discussions of mature themes. Maleficent is a victim of assault. She has a justified hatred towards the humans in general because a human was the one that did it. She has misplaced hatred towards the child of her victimizer who did nothing wrong. So you got quite a bit to explore for a sequel. Instead, let's forgo any further exploration of these dark, mature themes that probably makes everybody uncomfortable. Let's make it a schlocky, action-filled blockbuster. And Maleficent is now retconned into being a descendant from the Phoenix, an ancient and powerful dark fae. She's also the chosen one. She can reconcile the relationship between fairies and humans. She could save the world, or she could destroy the world. What will she choose? Pile that on with the first film, that wanted to build Maleficent as a tragic figure, but the sequel pivots. In a lot of ways, they're trying to make her like her animated character, with her having more of a snide attitude and everything. This pivot makes Maleficent come off as an entirely new character. It feels like we were robbed of a more personal and engaging story. Because all the elements are set up in the first film. Maleficent doesn't like humans. She was the victim to a man who acted as though he was her friend. She has Aurora as her adoptive daughter. Aurora is in love with Philip. Maybe Maleficent doesn't trust Philip. Now the narrative is about a former victim and a mother healing from her trauma, allowing her daughter to love and be happy, and Maleficent creating a friendship with Philip. That seems like a pretty interesting story. We end up with an over-the-top, tone-deaf, Avengers-style loud war movie where there is mutilations, tons of death, and it's wrapped up with a wedding because... tee-hee? Don't think about it. The first Maleficent was an interesting idea, poorly executed. The second Maleficent is a poor idea, poorly executed.
Poor thing.
Cruella. As you can imagine, the idea of turning a puppy killer into a tragic figure or a misunderstood hero was met with revulsion. Disney's solution? The movie is a revenge story with Cruella as an anti-hero. As a child, Estella Miller is a brat who thinks highly of herself and refuses to conform to social norms. She did have her mother to help, but she's killed by a pack of Dalmatians early in the movie. Oops. We jump a decade later, where Stella has grown up on the streets as a con artist, with her adoptive brothers Jasper and Horace. From here, this film pivots from a Cinderella coming from rags to riches story to a revenge heist thriller to track down and ruin the woman who killed her only family. Estelle even takes up the supervillain style persona and moniker of Cruella, and the movie becomes vastly more engaging and fun to watch. The entire middle portion of the film comes off as if Cruella was a Batman 66 style villain, with her devil-may-care attitude and taste of theatrics, all to get revenge on the Baroness, a character who shares many traits to the original anime Cruella, so that our new Cruella can be a clean slate, and honestly, it works pretty well, if a little bit redundant. Any weakness comes from, once again, Disney's lack of commitment on themes, such as Estella's mental illness and how it might be because her birth mother was clearly deranged. Cruella gives vague hints that perhaps mental illness is hereditary, then drops it. Same with the theme of conformity, be it Estella's own more outlandish dress, or a character that the media outside of the film will say is gay, but the character within the film will never contextualize that he is gay. Because Disney is a studio that doesn't like to make folks, feel uncomfortable. Or, more importantly, upset box office revenue. In its own bubble, Cruella is not that bad, and was actually an enjoyable romp when it's the over-the-top heist thriller. But seeing how it's getting a sequel, we'll just need to see if this dog can learn new tricks.
Pete's Dragon. In terms of rehashes, this is one of the better ideas, or at least an idea that piqued my interest. You take an old flick from the 1970s that was a live-action animated hybrid musical. You can add some contemporary music and animation techniques. It could be very fun. Pete's Dragon is none of these things. For one thing, not a musical. The animated dragon, the centerpiece of which the film is named after, hardly in the film. Add some very drab colors and inject a perpetual feeling of sadness permeating the film, and you'll go on a journey to the land of boredom. It's like the Man of Steel remake of Disney movies. This is a movie wherein a child is raised by a dragon, and it's actually boring. They want to use the dragon sparingly and focus on the human element of Pete. That's fine, I get that, I even support that to some degree, so you have to make the human element really connectable. You didn't. A big criticism WHYBOY has with the film is its lack of sincerity. Me, I just think the movie's boring and that's it. Important subjects are brought up, but feel like they're treated with minimal gravitas to an insulting degree. For example, the opening is very dark, seeing Pete's family killed in a car crash, and then Pete's forced to live in the woods for 6 years being raised by Elliot the Dragon. So when Pete is found by humans, everyone just sort of acts like an idiot. When Pete panics and runs away, the police chase him down. Because that's how you handle a sensitive case like a child dealing with isolation and trauma while growing up in the wilderness for half a decade, right? Then Pete's brought into a family, and within a day or two, they plan to turn Pete over to child services. Surprisingly, the kid dealing with trauma and starved for a home after being lost for nearly a decade in the woods developed an attachment to the family that brought him in, only to learn that about a day later, they just were going to give him away. This movie comes off like it exists in a bubble where nobody seems to have a soft touch on knowing how to deal with this situation. And then the movie also wants to pat itself on the back for a job well done because it's under the illusion it wrote a story of heart, family, and togetherness. Funny enough, the only feat Pete's Dragon accomplished was it dragged on. And if that pun annoyed you, I just saved you the emotional experience of watching the movie. You're welcome.
Christopher Robin. This film is one of the more interesting approaches amongst the Disney remakes. Granted, it's not really a remake. If anything, it's a sequel to any number of the animated Winnie the Pooh movies. Christopher Robin is a good, if somewhat generic film that overlooks serious topics like many modern Disney films. They glance over how Christopher Robin served in the British Army during World War II and never really discusses the ramifications of being a soldier. Nope, it's a plot you've heard in Mary Poppins, Jungle to Jungle, and The Shaggy Dog. Coincidentally, all three of them are Disney movies. Go figure. The story is about Christopher Robin, a parent more focused on work than family, who then needs to learn that family is the most important thing of all, through magical shenanigans. With that this time being Winnie the Pooh and Friends. So the plot is very standard, but what it has going for it is the 100 Acre Woods cast. Winnie the Pooh is still as compassionate, lovable, and the friend we all wish we had in our life. The kind of friend that looks at the world without a corroded sense of cynicism. This is a movie that works for me and NERO because of that familiarity. Growing up with Winnie the Pooh and seeing these characters brought to life looking like interactive dolls made our experience really heartfelt. That is the connection this film had for us. It's a film that knows how to make you reminisce about those quieter, easier times when you were young and pull you along a joyful, nostalgic journey. Christopher Robin is one of the few others on this list to capture that magical realism feeling of John Hughes' kind of writing. A weakness might be that the 100 Acre Woods cast aren't a manifestation of Christopher Robin's own psyche, but are real and seemingly from another dimension, which may break some people's immersion of the movie. But really, the only real off-putting thing about this movie was the promotional work. Who thought it was a good idea to have the cast look good cool? If you can look past that, you still have a well-constructed film about family and familiar characters. More or less, watching Christopher Robin is like saying hello to an old friend, and really, who could say no to a silly old bear?
Mulan. Out of all these films, this one is by far the worst. Disney took a film we loved, despite its flaws, and they made us pull a complete 180 on it. This by no means is that Mulan 2020 ruined the original film. It's bizarre. Disney would take one of their films of empowerment and turn it into a hodgepodge of a generic war film and combined it with a idolized power fantasy. This film lacks subtlety. From a phoenix littering all of Mulan's scenes just to make sure you know she's reviving guys like a phoenix, to the new villain being literally anti-Mulan. This plays into the big change they made from the '98 film. Before, Mulan had to work to overcome obstacles. It used to be that physical obstacles were difficult for her, so when adversity arose, she would overcome it. Now, Mulan is born with an innate magical ability. Her ki makes her inherently superior to everyone, allowing her to pull off outstanding feats simply because she was born special. This is parallel with Anti-Mulan, who was born the special, so she uses her evil special to get revenge on the male-dominant society. She does this by being a goon for a male villain, and tries to help him with his invasion of China. I don't mean to laugh, but when you read it out loud, it actually sounds just stupid. The movie's just scene after scene of, we're the special, ripping away any sort of tension from the scenes, and replacing it with heavy-handed symbolism. You get it? They're the same, but they're also different, guys. It's all about phoenixes, rebirth, men suck, Chinese death camps. Oh wait, that's where this was filmed. Oops. Mulan was already a really cool character in the '98 film. She had been considered weak by others, but she was not only wicked clever, she had determination. And it showed that she could do just as good as anyone else by putting in the work. You got rid of that. Now she's reduced to an action hero from like the 80s films. You know, that schlock where a character does cool things because by design, it's cool to see cool things. And if that's what folks want, go for it. I like seeing cool things too. Mulan was one of Disney's best heroes because, unlike a lot of the female leads, Mulan was a person of action. She got off her butt, she went out there and got the job done. She went to war, for crying out loud. She had to overcome the odds. And in the rehash, she feels like she's just been reduced to a power fantasy for a market that seemingly has little interest in this stuff. I wonder how that worked out financially.
All right, that's it. Dishonor. Dishonor on your whole family.
And those were the 5 best.
And 5 worst Disney live-action rehashes.
And while some are a hit and others a definite miss, there's a lot of magic to be found in these movies. Right, NERO?
The only magic to be found is in the Scrooge McDuck-sized money vault Disney rakes in from this weaponized nostalgia.
Oh, why don't you die now, Goblin Boy?
What the fuck?
Thanks for stopping by and watching our ToonGrin 10s. What are your thoughts on these Disney remakes? You hate them? Love them? Please leave a comment below and let us know.
Feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay up to date on all ToonGrin projects. You can follow us on our social media, join our Discord, and support us by tipping at our Patreon or making a purchase on our online shop.
All links are in the description below. Thanks for stopping by, and as always, be sure to tune in
To ToonGrin.